Hello, it's Christy again, and I'm here to show you something very fun, a dodo. Now, we know about dodos. They are a bird that went extinct in the mid-1600s due to their little island of Mauritius where they lived, being overrun by people who thought they were tasty. Not really cool, but we do have them immortalized forever in Alice in Wonderland. And from that, we know that it's a wonderful, weird creature with a crazy face and a plump body and ridiculous little wings, and such fun to make. So today, we're going to make the little dodo so that you can at least have one forever around your neck, and at least it won't be extinct in your heart. So let's go make a dodo. Come on. Okay, so we're going to start with color. Grayish purple for the body. Nice little orange bits for the feet. Little white for the tail feathers and the wings, and a sort of ecru-y with maybe a slight bit of orangey color in it for the face and beak. And then we'll add details with all the other powders and things that we have at our disposal. Okay, so mix and condition, obviously, make those colors or your own version of those. And we're going to start with a body. Body is very plump. So I'm just going to start off with a little round ball and look it all over, see if all the striations interest you. If anything looks a little crazy, you can kind of smear it around a bit and make sure you like what it looks like, and then pick the part you want to be in the front. Then once you've done that, I'm just going to flatten this out just a little bit like this. So this is his body. Pretty simple, right? And you see how it's kind of flattened there. I'm making a focal bead, obviously, or you can wear it as a brooch. And I want to make sure that that has a nice roundness to it, but it's not too tall. Okay, so that's good. So now we're going to add to that the neck and the back of the head. The front of the head with the beak and everything is a whole nother piece, but this should work for the head and neck. So what I kind of do is just sort of make a rough size to see if that looks like it's going to work there. It curves out and around, and now that I took that off, I think I want it back again. And then just adjust and put it on there. So we're putting it a little bit of a log there, something very simple. And it kind of comes out at the front here and is going to curve up and around. So he's got this plump body and this little bit here that curves up and around. And then the beak's going to come off of that. All right, that's what we have so far. So he looks like a snail. Great. All right. Now, really, that's about all for the body, except for we'll add the tail and the wings and that sort of thing later. And you see I had plenty of gray. So you always want to make sure you make a bit more than you think you're going to need, just so you've got plenty. I never like to get halfway through a project and then you run out of color, because that's kind of lame. All right, so face and beak are all going to come off here. And it's a little funky. What it actually is the whole face is here, and then the beak is connected to the face. A lot of times the beak just comes separately onto what would be the same color here, but not on a dodo. The whole kind of bare face and beak are all together, and they got that weird pronounced nose, which is sort of a bit like a, let me get a little closer here, like a vulture in a way. So what I've done is I've taken this little lump and used my fingers to manipulate, so I'm envisioning this head here, and it helps to obviously have your pictures nearby and sketch something out if that helps a little bit. And there's the rest of the top. Now I'm going to put a bottom jaw on there, but for now we want to just place this on top of there. So what I'm going to do is just press this on and try it out for size to see if that looks too big or too small or too whatever. I think he needs a little bit more of a pronounced head, the top of his head here. So I'm going to just kind of pull that neck up a little bit and curve that out just a bit more, flatten it a bit more, then put that head back on. See how that gives him a bit more of his the back of his head there. So that's our good shape there for our dodo so far. Now this is the top beak, and it's very pronounced ridge on this. So I'm going to take my tool and I'm just using it to make a little curve line here, because that part kind of, again, sort of like a vulture would have that really pronounced beak part there. We're going to add some powder to it because it's a little bit of a different color as well, but I really want the knob to be noticeable. So we've got this little line there so that we can really see that part. The nostril was back here too. So this little knob came forward and the nostril's back there. So once we put the eye and everything on, we'll go from there. Now this round part here, in some of the pictures, it kind of curves almost like a heart shape. So if you want, before you put it on or after, you can give it a bit of a curve here. And so I'm just doing it with my tool afterwards. But then you'll have to smooth out the clay, which I'm doing right now, from making that indentation. If If you want that, you can do it like that. And once I get the eye on and everything, that will look good. Or you can leave it just rounded. Either one is going to work just fine. All right, so there's that so far. Now let's give him a bottom beak as well, because they had a pretty funky, like a chin thing on that bottom beak too. It's all about the mouth for the dodo. Their beaks are very unusual looking. So what I've got is a smaller little piece. I'm flattening it here because this is the part that's going to connect underneath that jawline there, and it is a ridge here. So again, get my tool, make that little indentation so that is more pronounced. See what we've got there? So I don't know if you can just see that there. I'm going to try to hold it still. So it's rounded here with a little indentation. And let's see if that'll fit underneath here and make the bottom beak. Okay, I'm going to lift this up a bit. So I can, let's move that out of the way. So I can attach this under here, then curl it back on, and put it back like this. All right, so there's our dodo mouth. Looks a little bone-like right now because we don't have any colors on it. Be not afraid. That will all come out nicely when we're done. And you see how it's kind of open like this and then it curves downwards a bit? Again, that's a very dodo look. All right, so looking good so far. Now we're going to add eyeballs and some other things, which it needs to give it some personality. Okay, so now what I want to do is want to add the eye. And I'm going to start off with just a little ball of the same color in the place where the eye is going to be. Just give myself a place where it's going to go. And I'm going to use one of my glass eyes. Okay, so this one I've trimmed it down a little bit. This is a glass eyeball, as you can tell. And I'm using a kind of big one. Now, you don't have to do this. You can also use a little round glass bead if you prefer. That works just fine. I'm going to put a little ball of white clay behind where the eye is going to be. Be careful for it not to get too big because then it'll blob out outside of the glass eye, which will make them look really startled, which may be a look that you want, but you know, I don't know. But what it does is it allows the color underneath to be unchanged by the background clay. So that looks kind of nifty. All right, so I've just pressed that in there. Now I went with a big eye because I really kind of wanted to play up the personality. And I think that is kind of fun now. He still looks a little weird because that's sort of bone color, but don't worry, it's going to look great once we get some powders on and everything on there. So we're going to put on the little feet next, and then the wing and the tail. And then last step will be to powder everything up, all right? So let's play with the wing and the feet. We'll start with the feet. Okay, so feet, we're using that orange, and it's a dull orange. I didn't like to make it too bright, so having it mixed down with some yellow and some gold and even a little white is kind of fun, I think. So we need a nice thick leg, and we need some toes front and back. There's a couple of ways you can do it. I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a log, and I'm going to bend forward where the toes are going to come from. Then we're going to thin down the leg, and we'll add the other toe on the back side. And if you've got any wrinkles like I did there, get them out of the way. So you start off with this kind of foot like this. And then all I want to do is take any kind of a cutting type tool, and let's cut that leg into 3. Okay, so we've separated it into toes. Now, a needle tool, or again, like this tool has a nice rounded part of it, get it in between those toes. So you can kind of, you know, get the cut marks gone, make it look a little bit more like a toe and less like a piece of clay that got cut marks in it, because that's boring. And I'm going to get my fingers in here and push those all apart so I can finish up the realisticness of that. And I'm using that as a rather loose term because we know that this is very stylized and a little bit kind of cartoony. But we want it look convincing. So see how I'm getting my fingers in here and I'm just kind of rolling back and forth to make those the right thickness. Now we can cut the length down when we're ready. That's pretty stubby. I mean, pretty long for our dodo, and stubby was better. So we're going to cut off the tips of his toes there and make them a little shorter. And then I'm going to go in and just round them up and give them a little bit of a point, like there's like little nails on there. So see, I'm just kind of pinching a bit. Let's do that again on this toe so you can see it. Just pinching a little bit and ending in a point. So they had toes in the front, toes in the back. And And I can't remember now if they had 3 or 4 toes in the front. We're going to go with 3. And then we're going to add a toe to the back. Now, there's a couple ways you can do it. You can just add one like a carrot and stick it on there. If I have enough clay, and I do, I tend to like to pull it out of the clay itself. It's more stable if you can do that. So you see what I'm doing is I'm just sort of pulling this toe back here. And so now he's got one like a big chicken. Got one back there. Okay, so there's his nice fat foot, and we do want to make it skinnier because that is just ridiculous. So I'm just going back and forth with this until I'm making that a little thinner. That's about right. Let's get rid of our excess. So we're looking at something about like this. Now we need some details, little ridges and everything to make it look more fun. And let's do that now before we add it to him. Needle tool, and we're just going to put lines on here for like knuckles and toe lines, whatever they're called. Knuckles, I guess, right? Chickens and dodos and birds have knuckles, don't they? Anyway, this one does. So we're going to go lines, 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 and we'll probably use some powder to add the toenail look to it in a bit. But right now I'm just doing the lines. So you see what I'm doing is I'm doing it on the front, and then I'm continuing that curve around the side a little bit, just to make it look, again, a bit more realistic, not just like lines on the front of the clay, but trying to make it look anatomically correct. And we'll do that on the back too. So this one, since there's only one, I can kind of roll it, which makes it a little easier to get around that corner. Okay, so now we've got a nice little fat leg, and it probably needs some lines that go this way too, right? That's a very bird thing. And let's do that. So here's our finished foot ready to be added. So proportion, you see how big this is compared to the bird. That's correct. They had nice big fat feet. So now what we're going to do is we're going to poke a hole in here and stick that leg in and see if 1 is enough. If you want, you can do 2 to get the proportions right, but we're doing like a profile guy, so it's not important to have that second one there if it looks okay. I'm going to take a tool with a nice rounded tapered edge. This is the Can't Live Without It tool, which you just can't live without. But anything you have that's like that, a wooden tool that comes to a dowel tool that comes to a point would work too. So this is going to go in there, but we need to make the leg a little less long, so there's not as much to stick in there. And I'm going to point it so it'll go in. A little dab of liquid clay in that hole is a good idea. Liquid clay is great for all kinds of clay-to-clay connections. So whenever you're trying to put something together and you don't want to use a lot of brute force to make it stick in there, use a little bit of liquid clay, because that way you can press it into the hole and it's going to just connect nicely without a lot of shoving. All right, so here's our dude so far. And there's his little toes. We'll play with those in a bit more so that you can see the toes a little bit more once we get them all into position. And I'm going to go with just 1 right now. If that bothers you and you want to do a second one, then you can. And I'm going to tilt them just a bit so you see those back toes. All right? Good so far. Okay, for tail feathers, I'm going to just take a little ball of white clay and roll it into a teardrop and flatten that out in my finger a little bit. Now we'll turn this into a feather by adding some feather lines to it. And the Can't Live Without It tool is another ideal use for this tool. Is I'm just going to use it to press feathery indentations around the outside of both sides. I'm not going full blast. This is just to give it a little bit of feathery look like that. All right, can you see? There it is. And I'll do the same with the second one. And then we're going to put those 2 together and stick them in a little hole in his bum so that he can have a nice tail. They had the funkiest little tail feathers back there, just like a little floop, almost like an ostrich, that kind of just a bit back there. Nothing spectacular, certainly no peacock. All right, so this is going to come and curve. So you see what we're doing there is we're just kind of curve it. And we'll do the same for this one. Give it just a bit of a curve and put the 2 together. I'm going to put like 1 sort of on top of the other. So the little small one, let's see if I can make it work here. Little small one goes on top of this one so they can both curve like this. Gives it some a look of more than 1 feather, although who knows, they only had a few. And then we'll do the same thing with the tail here. Up high, because it kind of stuck up almost like a pony. See that little hole there? A little bit more liquid clay. Right in that hole, bloop. And let's stick our tail feathers in. So what I did is I pinched them together at the end, kind of curled them a bit. See how they have their little curl there? And we'll just stick them right in that hole and press them in good and make sure they grab. And see how he's got like a little curved, let me get him up here so you can see him, little curved feathers sticking out the back. Isn't that nifty? Just like that. Cool, right? Okay, wing time. Okay, so for the wing, what we're going to do is just use some of the gray clay and make a little teardrop and flatten it. So you see how I've got this about, oh, how big would that be? Just a small one. Nice little flattened bit here. And then we need just a little bit of white for the whole wing. And I'm just going to take this and sort of flatten it into, oh gosh, what shape is that? Kind of an oval, flattened oval. And this goes right on top of that, like this. So you see that? Now we're going to turn this into wings, or I should say feathers for the wing, by just drawing a line for maybe 2 lines for 3 feathers. And I'm going to use a tool. Let me pick this up. I think it's a little easier. So I did the lines, show me where they went. And now I'm going to use my tool just to continue that line. So see how that makes an indentation like that? So we'll see what I've got there. Now I need to make those into a little bit more feathery. So again, we'll take that can't live without it tool, a line down the center of each one, and then little diagonal lines all along that ridge. Doot, 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 doot. You can make the sound if you want. That usually makes it work better. Doot, 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 doot. Doot, 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 doot. Obviously, that is incorrect. It doesn't work at all. But you can do it if you want to. Okay, almost done. There we go. Little lines. Boop, boop. So see, we've got now a nice little feathery wing. And that wing, he's got like a bit of an elbow. So this curves like this. So that's his elbow, and it's going to go right here. So let's get it into position. And that's maybe a little long. Curve it like this. So it's going to look like this. It's going to be put on like that. And once I've placed it into position, I'm just pressing it in there. And it's probably a good idea just to blend that a little bit right up there. So let me get my tool. All right, sorry, out of screen. That's useful. And blend right there. Just blend that in. Make it look like it belongs there. Tools work really good, and then use your fingers to minimize any tool marks. There we are. All right, so see what we've got there? Let's get that head back up. Let's get him faced properly. There's his little leg, face. Okay, so we've got our basic dodo face. We have one more thing we need to do, is we need to give him a nostril, and the nostril was right here. All right, so there he is. Now he definitely needs powders to finish him up. All right, we're going to do powders next. All right, let's get going with powders. Let's make this guy look a little bit more interesting, shall we? Let's start around the face. I am convinced that a little bit of fun color in that face would be really fun, and I'm using powders from the Surface Effects series that I have, but you can use any kind of chalk or pastel powders that you have, whatever makes you happy. I'm going to start with a little purple and pink combination from the Fairy Tale set, and I'm just going to give him a little bit of color around the face, and maybe just a tad inside the beak. Okay, now we want a little bit of darker color, and this is the gray. This is Depth, I think it's called, and it's from the Metalicious one. So I won't tell you where each thing is. You can go check online and see where the different powders are. And you can get them individually, or you can get them from the sets. Now you see I put that in the hole, and of course there's more than I need, so I'm going to use just a bit of tape to take it out of that hole. Now I'm also going to give the front of the beak some of this gray, because they did have a nice little color here, and we want to give him something fun. So let's get a little bit of that gray here, and let's see how that looks. That looks pretty good. And let's brush that back just a bit. trying to feather that in there just to make it graduate, you know, so it doesn't look like it just stops coming around on the back side of that. All right, so that gives his beak, or her beak, depending on what you want, a little bit more definition. We can even put a little bit of pink in there too, give it some festivity. A little purple, boop, boop, boop. All right, so that definitely makes that face pop a little bit. Let's take a little bit more of this gray and get it back here. I'm kind of blowing as I go to get rid of excess. Make sure you don't blow that into other people's faces, because that's totally no fun. All right, so there's what we got so far. I'm going to use just a bit of this gray. Now, I have other colors besides the ones that I've got in my set that you might want to use, pan pastels. I've got a nice little gray pan pastel. What I want to do is put a little bit of color in the wings, the feathers, but I don't want it to be over much. So see what we're doing there is just giving it a little bit of definition. So you can see that there is some detail in those wings, those little feathers of the wings, but not like too much. And I'll do the same thing in the tail feathers. Just accentuate those little ends, maybe a little bit like where it comes in to the body. Just a bit here. Chalks are so wonderful. They are such a wonderful way of finishing powders. I shouldn't say just chalks, all powders. Wonderful way of finishing up a piece, because it doesn't look finished until you get some of these little nuances of color and stuff on there. So you should have every powder in the world. That's my opinion. All right, so I think we can get a little bit more in there. Gravity doesn't make this thing fall down. I think we're going to be okay. So see what I've done there is I've just added a little bits of gray here and there to make that tie in. Okay, so far so good. Now we need a little bit of definition on here, and you can get kind of sparkly. One of the things I like is this holographic glitter. Glitter can be fun if it's used sparingly, so I'm going to give him just a touch of glitter on his wing area. Oh, cookies are done. And just on his little chesty area there. So it just gives him a little bit more disco, because, you know, that's always fun. And then let's get my other brush and get a little bit here to create an illusion of shadowing. Sometimes that's nice to put a darker color on the underneath side of things, just to kind of make things stand out a little bit more. Okay, so see what we've got there. All right, now we want a little bit of orangish or something in the feet. I'm going to actually add a little bit of that pink, just for funsies, because I do like how the pink looks on. It's unexpected. It's such a bright color, but you know, when you put it on certain things, it kind of like looks a lot better than you would think. At least I think so, because it adds a color, but it's not as neon once it gets on other things, because it is a chalk. It's not a mica powder, so it kind of blends right in. All right, so see what I've done there is I've given little toenail bits by adding the dark there. And I'm kind of thinking that we do need an orange a little bit, even though Dodo, I don't know that orange was their deal, but we might want something orange-ish to accentuate the beak. I've got some chalk, these are pastel powders here. I'm going to take a little of that and we'll add just a bit to the beak here. Give him just a hint. Now it's a little muddy because of all the different powders on his face, but I don't mind that. If that's a problem for you, then you can use tape and get rid of that excess. But that just gives some color there, and then I'll use my tape to take off a lot of that extra, so the highlights pop back up again. That kind of accentuates the ridge of the jaw. Let's see if I can get that in there. One more bit of tape. Tape is your friend. It really helps you just take things away where they don't belong, or minimize where they got too much. Okay. And I'm using my finger too to blend that in. And of course, I've pulled away a little bit of the gray on that beak in so doing, but that's easy to fix. All right, so what do you think? Now that's a big mess with all that other tile. We're going to come back and put him on a fresh, clean bit of tile so you can see him or her in all of its glory in just a moment. And that way it will be more visible what the world is going on. So look we got our little happy dude. Fun, 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 right? Look at our Dodo. How cute is he? Okay, so let me put him on something clean and fresh so we can see him all done. All right, so I did a couple of little tweaks here. I decided that it needed a little of the blue in the head and the body instead of just the black. I thought that looked a little bit nicer. And I elongated the beak just a bit more by pinching it here and dragging it out. I realized that as I had been working with it, his beak got a little shorter than he started off with. So that gives him a little bit better looking face there. And the blue is a little bit, just a little touch instead of just the black there. You can do that if you wish. But anyway, so there's that. And then now all he needs is a way of hanging him. You may make him part of a shadow box arrangement, or you may have some sort of Alice in Wonderland thing that he'll figure in, or you can put a brooch or a magnet on the back. You can just glue those on after it's done baking. You may want to hang him up like for a necklace as a pendant and that kind of thing. So that would require just putting a little hook at the back, and I'll show you how to do that right now, just in case you don't know how. So I'm going to use anything with a rounded handle and a little piece of 20 gauge wire, and I'm going to crisscross this wire over itself. So you've got like that little loop there. Then I'm going to put that back into my handle so I can hang on to it, and I'm just going to take this and twist the side of this wire around the one. So I should say take one part of the wire and wrap it around the other one. So I made my crisscross, but then one of them wraps around the other. It's not like a twisty tie like you would do for bread, but it's very similar. So it kind of wraps around it instead of just twisting the two together. So you see what you end up with. And then with your wire cutters, you can just cut off this excess here. And I usually am going to make that probably buried in there. So I'm going to cut it off as close as I can. And then I'm going to just use my pliers here to just make sure that everything's kind of tight there and pressed around as it needs to be. And my loop is pretty straight, not 100%, but it's not bad. So see what you've got is you've got then a circle thing that you can hang from, and it's wrapped around here, and then a bit of extra wire. I'm going to trim that extra wire off and put just a little bit of an elbow hook in it. That way when this goes in into the clay, it's going to grab in there and not pull back out very easily. So I'll actually hook that just a bit more. Then we're going to take our dodo. Come here, dodo. And we're going to ease this into his back. So I'm starting by putting the hook in at an angle like that, and then adjusting it properly. And you can leave that sticking up if you want to, or you can press it down in. I always like to press it a little bit. And you'll also notice too that this is just slightly crooked, kind of leans a bit, but I'm not going to try to fix that now. Once it's all baked, then I can give that a little bit better. I just basically take the pliers and pull it a little bit so it's not lopsided. But then that gives you a really nice little hanger, so he can hang from a nice little cord or a chain, or even hang on the wall with that or whatever. So there we have our finished dodo. All happy, ready to hang, not even looking at extinct at all. That's it. Dodo done.